Welcome to CrossTalk. This is the 2021 Candidates Edition, as we will sit down with the candidates who are seeking office, both in Whitman and Hanson. As you know, there are races on both ballots for May 15th. Let's get that is the third Saturday in May. It's the tradition in these two communities. Today, we are going to be talking about the Whitman Selectmen's race, and joining us is Rosemary Connolly, and she is a candidate on the ballot for election. Rosemary, welcome to the conversation.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
You got it. For those who don't know who you are and the service that you have done on the Finance Committee, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Rosemary Connolly. I've been on your Finance Committee for some time now. I'm in my second term on Finance right now. So I'm into my fourth year. I came in when things started getting hot and heavy, and we started talking about overrides. We've managed to delay those for a period of time. We have a new town administrator that's really got a handle on it. We thought we were going to have an override this year, but managed to delay it one more year. I'm a mother with two children in the schools. I'm hoping to represent that demographic on the Selectmen Board. We don't have any parents that have children in our local schools, and we're seeing less attention being paid towards their needs over the years, and not prioritized. And I'd like to provide that representation.
Is that your primary reason for running, or do you have reasons for seeking office?
I have multiple reasons for seeking fair taxation. Always watching what people can afford, finding that balance financially and with services, and also while honoring our labor forces. Finding the proper way to pay, not, I'd like to also look into how we hire to make sure that we're hiring the best people at the right rate. We've heard a lot about when we were looking for a town administrator, there was a focus on hiring somebody from town. And I really felt like that wasn't an appropriate way to do that. If the person is from town, we did have a wonderful person who applied that was from town, but it has to be the best qualified, and that shouldn't be part of the conversation in terms of how we're hiring. So just overall best practice. I really would like open government. I feel as if a lot of our decisions are made in a bubble at town hall, and we don't really bring options out to the public. So we saw a little bit of that last year with the statutory method. It was known for a few years before, and it was sort of kept quiet in the back rooms. And then when it came forward, it was nobody knew we have to give $500,000 to a town that was percentage of income was paying a lower percentage of their income towards taxes than we were. I think right now the average taxpayer in Whitman is paying a little around 17.5% of their overall income, whereas the average taxpayer in Hanson is paying about 15.5%. So when you're asking the group already paying more that making less to pay an additional amount on top of what the state has advocated that they pay, I feel as if that's not an honest conversation to have with them, to say, make statements such as we can't afford it or they can't afford it without giving solid data about what does it mean to afford. So my goal would be open government. I think if you were to say, what is your primary goal? Open government, and the understanding that we don't have to sell anything to our community, that our community, people who come in and vote are adults and they can make their own decisions. So it would be present options, and the citizens would make personal decisions based on what they felt were important. One of the things that upsets me the most and really is a goal for me, is to implement the town survey that we did, where it said we'd like to prioritize schools and emergency services. And we could have done that if we had properly implemented statutory earlier. We could have financially achieved what our citizens asked for. And I want to keep my eye on that, be there and serve this community as they ask, not sell them anything, but serve them.
Let's talk about the town finances, because that has been, I think, one of the top issues in this community for the past few years, whether it's a matter of bringing in a consultant to take a look at how the town has been spending its money, or how homes were assessed, and was there money lost, and and I know that there was also a push to make sure that there was some kind of a long range plan, whether there's a 5-year plan put in place. Give me your thoughts as someone who's running for selectmen, the importance of the town's finances, and where do you feel that they are at this juncture?
I would have had a different answer for you before this new town administrator. I mean, I am so impressed by this gentleman, and I think if anybody does a little digging and looking at his background, he has worked with the Department of Revenue. He is he's brilliant. He has some plans in place that I hope are implemented with how we capture the excess levy, so that we don't have, so we're taxing, and I said this last year, taxing consistently at a small amount, so that we aren't looking at overrides, instead of trying to suppress the tax rate so low that we jump up to overrides every 4 or 5 years, or the need for one. He has something on the ballot coming up that would grab that extra small amount and push off overrides. Now, I think it's really important to create consistency with taxation, that you don't have these erratic jumps that would cause overrides, because of a lot of our demographic work in the trades. And you'll see that a lot of, when your tax bill comes in the winter, maybe you're not working as much, and it can really affect you negatively, have to shift your finances. If you're making more money in the summer months and then in the winter. I mean, some people do work all year round like that, but being careful about letting people plan their finances, the actual impact in the home, what happens, is important.
And just so folks who are tuned in, folks, whether they're new to the town or maybe new to some town news, Lincoln Heineman hired earlier this year, brought on board and has a financial background. Give me your thoughts. Again, you talk about the bringing in a new person. What were your main concerns about hiring the next town administrator? You had an individual who had been in that position, and it was kind of an anomaly. I've said this many, many times before, that normally a town administrator, the lifespan of a town administrator in a community can be 3 to 10 years, give or take a few years. You had Frank Lynham, who was in that position for nearly 20 years. And you never know who you're going to be getting. If you're recycling another community's town administrator who struggled and had problems, or somebody who might have just been looking for, to move on to the next challenge.
I think Lincoln came from Hanover, and they do fairly well financially. And Lincoln also, I don't know if he was the town administrator. I think he handled the financial aspects of Hanover, but not the town. He was not the town administrator.
Yeah, there's a town administrator there. There is a town administrator there. Yeah.
Okay, I had something written down in my notes that was different. Sorry.
It's okay.
So I think that he made a lot of great decisions. There was a lot of great decisions there financially in Hanover. So hopefully he can bring a lot of that here to Whitman. We're seeing a lot of that in, he's making a lot of changes that are really in line with good government. So let's see how it's received, but yeah, very excited about him. Yeah.
What's the important when you're talking about a town administrator? You're talking about a governing body like the Board of Selectmen. How important is that union when it comes to economic development, which is going to generate, revenue?
The union between the town administrator and the selectmen.
Yes.
I mean, all government, all aspects of government. There's no one part that isn't, from the finance committee to the selectmen to the town administrator. So we had a bunch of Boy Scouts come in and they asked this question, what are the jobs of the finance selectmen? And I would say that, if you were to plan a trip and you were to say, the selectmen say, hey, let's go to Florida. And the finance committee would say, well, this is how much the gas is going to cost. This is how much this is going to cost. And, this is our budget. And then I would say the town administrator would say, okay, this is our route. This is the best route to meet that financially. So it's a working group of people. And for them to work together nicely is important and, do their best. I think Lincoln manages that well.
Okay. Capital projects. What do you feel, over the years, the town you built the fire, you renovated the fire station, you built a new police station, you renovated town hall. What do you see on the horizon? I know that there've been a few attempts to build a new DPW building or even just replace a part of it. I know that there's a conversation about a new middle school. What do you feel is the priority in the town of Whitman when it comes to capital projects?
I would say there's two different feelings, because there's a financial, where can we get our best financial bang for our buck? And then which building is absolutely falling down, and how many citizens does that building service? I would say out of our most damaged buildings, it would be the DPW. But it probably will be serviced or built after we do the middle school, because the middle school handles so many people and particularly children. So that will go, and we're receiving more aid to build that. So that would be the building that would be higher up in the capital projects in my mind, and also in the capital facilities list, because we have a list that sort of breaks that down. And I think part of that, what determines that is how much state aid or how much money do we get if we build this. It is a shame that we don't get more support. Hopefully we can, I would reach out as a selectman to the state or other places to try to see if we can get somebody to help us get some money to get that DPW built. It's a need. If anyone gets a chance, take a look, go inside. It's just not a place that you would want people to work. It does need to be done. So it's up there.
Knowing that as a finance committee member, that on a regular basis, especially this time of year, you've had a chance to sit down with department heads and they tell you, this is what my budget is, this is what my needs are, this is what my bottom line is. You have new individuals. We talked about Lincoln Heineman, new town administrator. You have Tim Hanlon, who is a new police chief. And soon you have Tim Brenner, who is retiring. Give me your thoughts about another veteran town department head who is leaving, but yet, what's on the horizon where you're going to have newer people in those key departments.
I am a liaison to Tim, and Tim is wonderful. He's been able to give me information, that I need to work through budgets and help out. My thoughts on, when they come to us and ask us, and if we don't have the money, is that this is where I say we should be able to have that open dialogue with the community to say, this is what your department heads want. This is your department head's vision. This is what we have for money, and give those options. Do you want to increase that? Do you want, I did ask this year, because it is COVID, that we consider anything above, we have recommendations, the Madden recommendations, I think you know about those, where it was 2.5% and then the 5% for the schools. Things were definitely thrown off by the pandemic. And of course, emergency services would have to see increases. So that threw off the whole Madden route that we tried to go by, which should have led us to an override this year. But like I said, Mr. Lincoln has done a great job to sort of patch things together to ensure that that's not happening. As far as I can see so far, it's not quite done yet, that budget, but I had asked that if we are to do this in the future, anything above and beyond, we put on an override, this amount over, and then the department head can speak directly to the community and say, this is why I've gone above and beyond this. This is what and I can manage to keep a recommendation. And this is my vision for the community, and the community can make their own personal decision on how they want that to grow. We're adults. We can vote for what we believe we need. We don't need, like I said, we don't need something sold to us. So,
all right, let's talk education. Let's talk about the school district, because we know that that's another very sore discussion that has been evolving for the past couple of years, to the point where there's even a talk about deregionalizing. And it's an interesting conversation. And a lot of this because of, the switch to statutory, because before it was per pupil wealth based. And now it's rightfully so shifted. What are your thoughts on, when it comes to the annual assessment that the community has to put forth, and, the finance committee, this board of selectmen have to get together and jointly go, can we afford to give them 7% this year? I mean, give me your thoughts as if you're elected as a select person, what your voice will be when it comes to education, and making sure that you're not only keeping your financial house in order in the town of Whitman, but you're also giving enough to keep growing at the education and the programs that they're providing.
Kevin, I want to take a second to break down the impact of when it was known, or when people are admitting it was known that we had statutory, to now. If we had in place, once we put in place the law, which is statutory, we would have over $4 million in education, which we invested as Whitman citizens. And that would have looked more like Lexington per pupil spending, Lexington, Massachusetts. So we're paying a Lexington education and receiving, which is up there above average, and receiving a below average education. So we're not getting that value. We didn't get that value. I'm not saying that we should have. I probably would have gone towards an Abington or more average per pupil, and put some more in other departments that are desperately in need as well. But the impact to the Whitman citizen, well, they were paying, like I said, right now, 17.5% of their income per capita towards taxes. And Hanson is paying a little bit around 15.5% towards taxes, to turn around and say, Whitman should be paying more towards education and not be receiving the value of its state aid, which is absolutely legally under Chapter 70 Whitman state aid, is confusing to me. The thought to deregionalize is confusing. I have to ask, what's the objective when you're deregionalizing? Is it spiteful because it will harm both towns? Probably Hanson more, as they have less people, and they will not give them the state aid that they seek. There's insurance, retirement money that they would both have to pay. I think it's 5 years ago, it was close to 5 million or 4 million. And it's increased because I don't believe they're investing in OPEG at the schools at the same rate we are in town. We've done a pretty good job here in Whitman. So what is the objective? Is the objective a better cost per student? Because if that's it, you wouldn't want to deregionalize. You'd want to add another town, right? The more students, the cheaper per cost, per student. So I would have to ask people, what is your objective when you're talking about these things? Is it, and if it's to have a great education at a great price, then we work towards the region. Understand that state aid that's allocated to a town should be used by that town as it's meant to offset the burden of paying for education for that separate community. And hopefully we can work towards that dialogue in the future. There are options to create better value and, create a bigger school to offset maybe loss of students by adding another town. We could do that if there was an option, another community wanted to be a third region. It always struck me as unusual that two town regions are complicated. You usually want more than two towns for a regional school. So
I would ask you this, and staying on this topic just for another moment here, would it be like an olive branch? If it got to a point where Hanson says we're pulling up because we feel that this isn't fair, I think that some of the conversations that I've heard, and I speak for nobody, how would you feel if you're an elected member to the Board of Selectmen and it's before your board to possibly, instead of it being a 60, having 6 school committee members for Whitman and 4 for Hanson, would you be for having it 5 per side, evening it out and giving up that extra seat that Whitman currently has?
Kevin, that's a law. That is not something you can do. Hanson can have extra people. They just have to have more students. Each representative represents students, not how many students are in there. So yes, that will shift with populations. But they might, adding another school might change that, right? They might have a town that has more students, and then Whitman would be the wheel. But that's a lot. So a lot of these conversations, and this is where open government really, like honest open government. The officials should be telling the truth. This is the law. It's because of how many students are there that they have their representation. If Hanson or if Whitman loses students, Hanson begins to have more students, this would happen. They would have more representation and they would have more in the school committee. It is fair that a town in an aggregate model has its state aid. And people should understand, if we deregionalize, they still have no access to Whitman state aid. It still stays with Whitman. So what, like I said, what is the goal? And people have to start saying, what is our goal? What is our long-term goal here? How do we achieve it? If it is, we just don't want to pay this much for education. Well, what does it cost for education? And I think if they broke down per capita what you're paying in your own individual bill for education, you'll find that Whitman and Hanson are one of the two lowest in Plymouth County per capita that we pay. So we might want to reevaluate what it is. Is it a shock? Like, how could this big amount of money all of a sudden not be noticed? That's probably really what happened. And it happened because lack of transparency. And that we need to be more transparent in our government.
As we're winding down our conversation here, Rosemary, I want to touch upon COVID-related items, and more so what helps put tax dollars, in the coffers for the community to be able to, have the amount of police and fire and be able to give those great services. Would you be in favor of a program or a plan, if one doesn't already exist, to help businesses that have survived COVID to be able to sustain and rebuild as we come out of COVID?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Our local businesses are valuable to us, are valuable to our community. It's a small town, so it's like family when you go and, you go to Peaceful Meadows, you know everybody and you want them to succeed. So I would be absolutely in favor. And I believe that it's part of the plan that the ESSER monies that are coming to the town, that's in place. We still have some guidance according to our town administrator. There's some guidance on how we can use that, but I would be in favor of such a thing. Yes.
That's the isn't that the Biden American Rescue Plan, the
Yes, it
federal
is.
dollars that are coming
I
in?
think we're going to get a little more than $1 million actually coming.
That's definitely fantastic. As we're closing things out here with our conversation, anything that we have not touched upon during our conversation that maybe you might want to take a moment to talk about, or is there something that we did talk about that maybe you might want to circle back and re-emphasize to the folks who are viewing this right now?
Yes, I do want to talk a little bit about, and it's ESSER monies, particularly for the schools for the next 4 years, they'll be receiving monies. And the idea that we'll be using it for special ed, but my hope is that we can start to have a conversation about the summer programs. Children have really lost out on activities. Kids have not really socialized for almost a year. The remote school is not as effective. And I don't know if you know this, my father was in special education. And one of the things he was very well known for was he was one of the people who pioneered closed circuit education, which is the model for remote learning. And my father was very clear, this was not as equal to actual education. It does not provide it. It was an emergency to provide education in hard times. That he did it for children that were in hospitals. That's how he designed it. And the kids didn't get the same education as they were in class. Something about being in that class with the teacher helps with math, helps with science. And I think a lot of parents are have the same sense that, my kid didn't get a full education for a year. I think opening up the dialogue about what's going to happen this summer with the schools so that we can begin to handle that and the emotional healing. Our children and our community have been on lockdown for a year. So having that conversation and using some of those monies to remedy those issues would be something I would be bringing to the table.
Okay. If folks want to reach out to you, they want to chat with you about your campaign. I know it's been virtually it's been difficult to be able to talk to people because of COVID until everybody got vaccinated. Again, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. How can people be able to reach out to you and get in touch with you?
Yes, I have a Facebook page. It's Rosemary Connolly for Selectmen. You can reach out to me there. And on that page has some email addresses and other things. You can check me out and start a conversation.
Rosemary, thank you very much for your time and having this discussion about your campaign for selectmen.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you for tuning in to segments like this with Rosemary. The idea is to better inform you about the candidates who are running. You've been watching CrossTalk, the 2021 candidates discussions that we have been having. And if you do not know where to vote, if you don't know what date it is, well, I can tell you it's May 15th. Both towns, Whitman and Hanson, vote the third Saturday of May. But if you don't know your voting status or where to vote or anything like that, you can always reach out to the town clerk's office, send an email, a phone call. It's the easiest way to do it, and get at least understand where the candidates stand on the issues before you go in and pull the curtain and make your decision. That's what's important, is going and being informed and making your decision. I want to thank you for tuning in. Until next time, have a great day.